Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another rainy day of EECS 494. There are barely any people in the room right now, and I cannot imagine why. Hopefully those of you watching online are nice and warm and cozy, maybe with some tea or some chocolate or something like that. The big announcement for the day, unfortunately not a pleasant one, is that the grades for about half the course are delayed. The P3 Milestone 2 grades, I had a family emergency last night, which forced me to do a lot of driving there and then back to teach this class. And yeah, it's not the kind of emergency that can be delayed. So we're going to try and get those grades to you. We're going to do a grading session on Thursday. I think probably we're scheduled for about 6 p.m. And we're going to go through and get the rest of those grades finished so you can get your feedback videos. It's kind of late in the week, not ideal. I apologize. But yeah, if you don't have that feedback, you can get it from or at least some feedback from that Monday playtesting session. If you ever want feedback in addition to that Monday playtesting session and our grading videos, remember you can take your game at any moment to family, to friends, to dorm mates. You can take it out into the public if you want to. Set up a table, bring your laptops to the Beister building. Student teams used to do that. They used to have an assignment where they had to go out and do that and record data and stuff like that. And so it definitely does work. An announcement that might be pleasant to some of you planning on taking EECS 298 next semester. We increased the capacity of the course from 40 to 80. And probably good news, since a lot of people have not had their appointment date yet. And this morning we hit the initial cap of 40 people. So we're up to 40 people now. And yeah, it's looking like people want that knowledge, or maybe just the advertising campaign went well, or yeah, I'm not exactly sure. But now the question becomes how on earth do we scale a 3D Blender course and grading? This is not the kind of course that we can auto-grade very easily. So how do we scale that to 80 people without that being a nightmare for all involved? We'll figure it out, I'm sure, but it's the stakes are rising. That's a good problem to have, though. One of the worst feelings is to have a course that no one cares about, which is, it's not very pleasant. I want to show you a really fun little clip on twitch.tv. This is a clip of a very famous member of the fighting game community, Daigo Umehara, who often kind of gets the title of world's best fighting game player for his very prolific success in the Street Fighter franchise. So this is a very, very highly skilled gamer who's very focused and can pick up on patterns and do a good job. I want to show you what happened when Daigo Umehara fought the famous character Sans Undertale in the famous indie game Undertale. And I want you in particular to pay attention to his emotional state, because it's a really good example of why we make games. Okay, I want you to see if you can figure out why. Why do we make games? Can you figure it out just from watching this fun clip? Watch his face. Listen to his voice. Headphone warning. So if you didn't catch it, he is in the very end of this fight with Sans Undertale. He's been trying this fight quite a few times, and he's almost to the end. He knows it. Everyone does. And the moment he gets to this final part of the fight where all of these lasers coming in and he realizes he's out of position, you can detect the exact moment where his heart splits in two, right? And his soul leaves his body. And the chat, if you watch this, the chat has been recorded as part of the clip, and it just starts going crazy during that part as well. So what to take from this, right? It's just a really fun clip, but one thing that is very real that we should take away, and I hope my desktop audio is working, it is, one very real thing to take away is that people really care about these things that we make. They get very emotionally invested. They even get physically invested. If you saw Daigo, he is zoned in, right? He's locked in, and when he realizes he's made some bad decisions, his soul leaves his body, right, in real time. And that is not the kind of thing that software developers writing banking programs tend to experience from their users, right? Unless something goes very wrong with someone's bank account. And so we should really kind of, this work is very, very, very hard, but it also matters a great deal to real people that you may care about. And so when the going gets tough, remember that what you're doing is very difficult, but perhaps in part because of that difficulty, it really, really matters to people, okay? And that's always been enough to kind of keep me going. I'm able to kind of tank a lot of late nights these days. In some ways, I work harder now than I did in college. And one of the reasons is because I feel like my work really does matter, right? If I do a good job, then students in my courses will have a much better time, right? It could affect their career. It could help them discover something that new that they love, a new field. Last night, I was working late to finish up the EECS 498 Game Engine Architecture exam. And exams are really important things to get right. And you have to make a brand new one every single semester. It's a huge pain. It doesn't really scale very well. But you got to do a good job. Okay, you can't mess up your exam. That has too much of an impact. Can't do a bad job. Okay, so anyway. All right, you can check out that link if you want to watch the entire fight yourself. It is a very fun time. And I think Twitch has some translation features that you can turn on as well if you do not speak or read Japanese. Okay, I think I told you all about like the courses available next semester, but I think one that I might have left out is Wolverine Soft Studio. This is an opportunity if you want to kind of continue your EECS 494 experience, if you enjoy making these big games with other people, this is a way to join an even bigger team, actually. Wolverine Soft Studio, this is, let's see here, this is a student-run team, kind of like Solar Car, where you can get course credit for participating and working on a big game team. So the team, recently went to GDC, and at the EECS 494 plus EMU showcase, the Wolverine Soft Studio project is always there. And it is a very interesting experience. The team has made a lot of things. They release games on Steam. They release games on itch.io. Having Steam games that you have worked on is a huge win for your portfolio. Recruiters really like that stuff, okay? You release on itch.io, that's good, but a Steam release is crazy good, okay? It gets recruiters very excited. So if you are very interested in the games industry or in a game-adjacent job, like visualization or simulation or something like that, or XR, then this is a really, really not a bad idea, okay? And you can get course credit. I think it applies, I think it's FlexTech credit if you need FlexTech stuff, just like 298 is. Give it a shot. You can take Wolverine Soft Studio for, I think, 2 to even up to 5 credits. The only fly in the ointment is that I will not be teaching it or grading it next semester. It looks like Professor Natalie Fang, who teaches the SI 311 course, is going to be teaching Wolverine Soft Studio from now on and grading it. But it's not a very heavy course. You just need to make sure you're contributing and that you can prove that via devlogs that kind of account for the time you need to spend. We'll see if Natalie changes that. I don't think she's going to change very much from how I was running it, but we'll see. Anyway, you can play some of their previous projects if you want to on itch or on Steam, and have a good time. Okay, our main mission for today is to kind of continue talking about this teamwork and cultural topic that's so important when you're on a team. And as a team gets larger, this becomes even more important. When you're on a small team, you can kind of get away with a lot of sloppy decisions and poor communication. It might work out, it might not. But as a team grows, you have to kind of start, developing unique practices to make that work. And so I want to continue talking about this, and I want to get into a very, very pragmatic mode. So if you recall, last time we watched this, in my opinion, really fantastic video from CGP Grey, right, talking about how politics and resources and power, how they kind of flow through many different structures in our life. The basic idea from this video, maybe the most important takeaway, is that the structures of power exist absolutely everywhere, right? From the way that world governments are structured, to the way that universities are structured, to the way that corporations and even small course-based project teams are structured. And so the important part is to think about these things, try and recognize when they're there, and thus you can kind of push and prod them and you can kind of fix them up when they go haywire. We talked about instances in the games industry when this went really, really poorly, right? Power was not managed, resources were not managed properly, and a game had a huge catastrophic failure as a result. I do think Big Red Button is actually still around, if you can believe it. They even have, they do like VR titles now. They're a much smaller team. They had a bunch of layoffs, but they're still around, and I think they, on their website, last I checked, they even still list Sonic Boom. Despite it being a disaster, they list it on the website pretty prominently, like they're very proud. Okay, and why not? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the things that can go wrong. And I think we talked about this last time. I'll just quickly go over it. Miscommunication is the main killer and kind of the common issue that pretty much any dysfunctional team is going to have. It's very easy to accidentally say something that's going to be misinterpreted, especially if you're saying these things via text or via some digital format that doesn't convey the full range of emotion that like in-person communication does. But you can still mess this up in person as well, okay? Especially if you're tired, especially if you don't really know someone particularly well. So you want to be very careful. In general, the more you communicate, the less likely you will be to miscommunicate. It's kind of a bit of an ironic thing. It's a bit of a paradox. But I would say the more you communicate, the more chances you have to fix a miscommunication when it happens before it can snowball into something worse. Power struggle is definitely a thing. You sometimes get people who are so invested in their project, they have this very clean, clear vision of what the project should be. If you have multiple people who are like that, you can get a conflict, right? Where it's hard to reconcile. There's this idea that we need one idea to win out and the other needs to fail and go away. That can create some tension. It can create some anxiety, okay? At a startup, at a corporation, this is pretty easy to resolve. There's one very obvious way to resolve it. The person who writes the check is the person who gets the final say, right? They can simply select idea, and then everyone else needs to commit or get canned, get fired. That's not a perfect solution, because if you do this, then people can have hurt feelings. Maybe their morale will be low. Maybe their performance will be poor if they're working on an idea that they feel like they were just shoved onto, that they don't have any ownership over. But we'll talk about how to solve that in just a sec. Freeloading is a very common thing, unfortunately, as well. And there are many reasons why freeloading might happen. Not all of them are immoral or just someone being lazy. Very often, people will take EECS 494 and they will also decide to take EECS 482, right? Maybe they have a bit too much ambition, or maybe they have an inaccurate feel for how this is going to go. Some students can take that, tank it, especially if they come in with a lot of Unity knowledge. They can actually make that combination work. But a lot of students will accidentally get themselves into a bad situation, and they will kind of lean too much and for too long on their team members, to the point where they're just really not contributing to the project until they get blown up at the end of the semester, because we can fairly easily detect all that stuff between data collection, my bots that are monitoring everything, and the peer evals from your peers. Control freak, micromanagement, failed delegator. Sometimes someone just takes control, iron grip over a project, and even if no one else really wants that level of control, right? This is kind of a variant of the power struggle, except there's just one person who wants the power. This can very quickly lead to people kind of falling off the project, and this is kind of what happened in Wolverine Soft circa like 2011 to 2015 when I was running it. I had a very clear vision for what the club should be and how I wanted things done, and thus I didn't quite have enough trust in my staff to do things well on their end. Probably because they often didn't do well on their end. I didn't get to form my team, and I didn't get to choose who I worked with. Voters did that. Yeah, that was not a good situation either, okay? Things went well enough for the club, but they didn't go super well for myself or my staff, all right? Anyway, very stressful time. Poor talent usage. If you have a team full of artists, you should probably not be making a highly technical simulation game. If you have a team full of engineers who have no art, talent in their body, you should probably not make a beat 'em up or a romance novel, graphic novel. Okay, you want to know what your team is good at. And in particular, you want to go more granular. You want to know what each individual person is good at. And as much as possible, you want to give people interesting things to work on. Everyone has to solve bugs at some point. No, it's never very fun. Some topics are super important to most games, and like UI. And if you don't have any UI engineers who love that stuff, like I do, then you're just kind of in trouble, right? Not much you can do. Someone's going to have to take the bullet. Okay, that's just what happens. But be very careful and very purposeful about who does what. And specialization, which we'll talk about in a bit, is a very powerful tool there. If someone has owned the AI systems in your game the entire development period, they like AI, they're constantly experimenting with it, tweaking with it. If an AI bug comes up, you should probably get that person to fix the bug. They can fix it in probably maybe even seconds or minutes, whereas another member of the team is far more likely to take hours and accidentally create more bugs, okay? So who does what work is a very, very big deal, okay? So try and get that right if you can. And try and reaffirm as often as possible that there are other human beings working on your team, that they don't, in fact, hate you, okay? And that they have concerns and hopes and priorities just as you do, okay, for your project. It's very easy if you're not meeting often, or if you're just meeting via text or DMs in Discord or via email or via phone calls. It's very easy to forget that there are other human beings on the line, and that they are as mistake-prone as you are, and that patience is deserved. So I highly recommend meeting in person if you can, or at least going camera on via Discord meetings, okay? That can be a very good technique. Anyway, yeah, how do you solve this stuff, right? You want to communicate. That's like kind of a cop-out answer. Meet as often as you can. Make sure you have each other's phone numbers, okay? You probably have each other's Discord usernames, but why would you want each other's phone numbers? Any idea? Like, why would you want to have it at that level of detail? Any thoughts? If there is a deadline tomorrow and your team member just pushed something to the repo, said, hey, everyone, I'm done for the night. Okay, I just did everything. I fixed everything. I'm going to bed. Good night. And then you discover a few minutes later that what they pushed is wholesale broken and you can't fix it. You're going to have a terrible night unless you can get them out of bed. Okay? If they've turned their computer off, you're in trouble. All right? Phone call, that might work. It might wake them up. It might get them back into it. I would also say, and this might sound a little bit weird, but it might be the thing that saves you. Know where your teammates live. Okay? That sounds a bit crazy, but no joke. Like, I've had experiences where, oh my God, the deadline is tomorrow morning. We need you to wake up right now. You're not answering your DMs. You haven't picked up the phone the last 3 times we tried to call you. I'm going to drive to your house or walk to your house or window right now and pound on your door until you wake up. Okay? And that has, it's bailed us out, knowing that information in the past. So I would get it from your teammates if you can. Power struggle. This is not going to be your dream project. And a lot of problems in 494 come from this mentality that this is my chance, right? This is my chance. I'm going to make my dream game. This is going to be the glorious, wonderful indie smash hit that gets me my job in the games industry. And that's pretty much never, ever the case, okay? The people who view your game, recruiters, right, interviewers, they probably won't play it. They'll watch your trailer, okay? This is not going to be the final game that you make, even if you don't go into the games industry, which is totally fine. You will have more opportunities to make games. You'll have more opportunities to make games with big, talented groups of people. Okay, you'll be, maybe make games on the weekends, or you'll get together with friends for a game jam where you'll create the next Celeste. Celeste was made in a game jam. Okay, so that's a really good start. Okay, please, all of you who hear this, say to yourself, this is not my dream game. I have room to compromise on this game. Okay, you are not Kojima, not yet, so try when you're communicating. Try and focus on we over our and our. We and our versus things like I and my. This is not my project. This is our project. This is not my idea versus your idea, right? This is simply our ideas, and we're trying to find the optimal set that will probably give our players the best experience, okay? Language is very powerful, and it's very easy to kind of chalk this up as, it's just a tiny thing. It's not that important. As soon as you start using things like, here's my idea, right? You're kind of setting the stage for rivalry to form, for tension, for competition to appear. Because suddenly it's going to be my idea versus your idea. Okay, one of our ideas will get chosen to receive time this week. And if my idea loses, that hurts. It's a bit personal now. Okay, and maybe I decide to dislike my teammates for arguing against my idea, right? Even if my idea is clearly the worst idea and we shouldn't choose it, by doing that, I'm going to feel a bit hurt, even if I kind of agree, even if I'm being a bit mature about it. But if we can kind of throw all of our ideas into a pot and say, okay, they're just kind of our ideas now, right? They just belong to everyone. Don't feel too attached to it. That allows you as a team to start making choices that are globally optimal instead of just optimal for one person, okay? This is more of a cultural thing. You have to build this up. But it really helps, and language over time does kind of build out a culture, so be careful about it. Freeloading, what can you do? Remind people of the course policy. Not to sound big brother, but we're definitely watching, okay? And we're going to get a lot of information toward the end of the semester, at the end of the project, and that's going to inform whether penalties come down and smash your A+ down to a B+, or a B, or worse. These penalties can get very, very big, all right? Up to 75% of the total points on the entire project, which is going to make it hard to graduate, okay, if you get that big penalty. If you need this to graduate, that's a really big deal, okay? And typically we have 1 to 2 people fail because they thought they could just coast on Project 3 and it wouldn't come to anything, right? Understand, if you are abusing your team, if you are abusing their trust, it is imperative that we stop you from graduating. I don't want you representing me. I don't want you going out into the world representing the university. I do not want you going to a startup where you'll probably lead to their demise because they invested a bunch of resources into someone who's just going to sit there, right? So keep that in mind, okay? And if you feel like your teammates are falling into that risk, maybe reminding them of all of this is something you can do to get them back into shape, okay? But also keep in mind that some weeks, right, like the last night that I just had, sometimes things outside your control are going to prevent you from contributing the way that you want to. Try and be an empathetic teammate. And if that happens to you, try and let your teammates know so that they don't assume you're just slacking off, okay? All right. If you do have control freaks or micromanagement and you feel like it's starting to kind of hurt the project, you need to start talking. You need to talk with your teammates, okay? You need to have the uncomfortable conversation, and you need to start moving to a vote. On a startup, votes don't matter. The person who writes the check has all the voting power, but you don't have that situation here, right? It's kind of a unique situation. In a class project, if you come to me, all right, I'm the one who issues grades. I have the carrot and the stick in my hand. I'm definitely going to side with the people who have the more support, right? The more votes. So just remind people of that and try and make decisions by consensus, okay? Poor talent usage. You want to specialize, and this is something that we're going to talk about much more in just a few moments. Specialization is really kind of how it works right now in the world. Okay, we used to have much more localized competition, localized industry. If you lived in 1700s Michigan, okay, when we were just a territory at most, probably not even we're probably not even in the USA yet. If you are in 1800s Michigan and you're a dentist, do you need to be the world's best dentist in that era to do well for yourself? No, your competition is local. You don't need to be the best dentist in the world. You just have to be the best dentist in your area, okay? But in the world of video games, this is not a local industry. This is a very global industry, okay? It does not serve you that well to be the best 3D artist in your area. It doesn't really serve you well to be a jack of all trades that can do all sorts of things, but only partially well. These days, if you really want to stand out and compete, you need to be exceptionally good at a small handful of things. If you look at most super popular indie titles like Undertale, they are usually mediocre at many things, but they are exceptionally good at a small handful. Toby Fox is making Undertale, and if you look at the artwork, you'll see that he's not particularly good at it. He is very good at character design, but he's not ultra good at rendering those character designs out onto the actual screen, into an actual image. But Toby Fox is one of the best, I would say, in the world at music. He is also exceptionally good at writing and character design. These are three things, okay, and most indie games that come out are lucky to have one thing they are especially good at. Combat doesn't need to be excellent, right? Other stuff doesn't need to be excellent either. And so that's simply the way of the world right now. If you want to have some of the best-in-class writing and music, you can play Undertale, and it exists for that reason. If your game is just generally good at many things, players can get much better. If they want a better story, they can go elsewhere. If they want better art, they can go elsewhere, right? If they want a bigger game, they can go elsewhere. So it doesn't really help us that much. I bring this up because specialization is super important. You can, if you have 4 people, get a lot more mileage out of having one person specialize, devote themselves to shaders, than by having everyone do everything. Having everyone do everything is a great way to learn, but it's not a great way to have a product, a final outcome that is exceptional, okay? At least that's the current situation. Remote apathy, okay? If you find the team starting to fall apart a little bit, right, starting to fall off of the project, you got people who are just detaching from everything. There's a lot of apathy going around. Trying to schedule time to meet with each other and work in pairs even, or as a group if you can, just get some work time going, is a really good way to get people back into the project. Another good way to get people excited about the project is to put your game in front of other people. Playtests aren't only to figure out what your problems are, they're also to remind you of what people love about your game, even in its early rough state. All of these games out here, every last one has at least one good to great thing about it, okay? Even if it's sometimes hard to see under the layers of issues and guidance problems and control stuff and all that stuff. So remind yourself that what you're working on matters by putting the game in front of other people. You'll probably find at least a handful of people who are pretty excited about it, and that can get you excited about it as well. Technical issues are a big thing that can come up on teams as well. Merge conflict is probably the classic huge one, okay? Usually every Project 3, and sometimes multiple times a semester on the Wolverine Soft Studio project team, merge issues, repo issues will become so bad that you have to actually nuke the repo, okay? What does that mean? Well, that means when you basically abandon the repository and you create a new, fresh, fixed repository by creating a new one in the cloud, taking the contents of the old one and just pushing it as an initial commit to that new repo. Often this happens when you accidentally push a gigantic binary file, and it's often very difficult to remove it successfully, extract it. You have to use a lot of kind of obscure Git commands to do it. The big problem is that removing that file from the repo visibly, deleting the file doesn't fix it because it's in version history where it will continuously cause things to slow down forever unless you go into the history and scrub it from there, which is very error prone and a scary thing to do, okay? Some techniques. Avoid merge conflicts by giving everyone their own scene to just do experiments in. If anyone causes a merge conflict on one of those scenes, you know how to solve it very easily. You can just take your changes and throw away theirs. You can do this very easily via, I think, GitHub Desktop, but also via Git command line, the terminal, by doing git checkout -- theirs to take their changes, or git checkout -- ours to take our changes, okay? Very, very nice thing. And ChatGPT, Grok, and all the other things, all the other AI assistants can help you resolve those situations, tell you what commands to use pretty effectively, in my experience. So use them, okay? You probably want to designate one person to handle the production scenes and kind of integrate things. When someone finishes a task that involves creating a new prefab or a new component, sometimes you'll have to have that person kind of bring it into that main scene, production scene. You can DM them, or you can say, hey, no one touched the production scene. I'm going to bring in this stuff. And then you can push it and tell everyone to pull, and now someone else can mess with the production scene, okay? Just be careful about that production scene. It's a moment when lots of things from different people have to come together, and that is the exact moment when merge conflicts can, if you're not communicating effectively, show up. In the industry, there are a lot of teams that use kind of bigger and more deluxe version control systems. One that you'll hear about a lot is Perforce. That's a very popular version control system for Unreal Engine. And it's what we used on The Sims. Perforce has kind of a really cool feature, if I recall, where basically you can issue a lock onto a file. Like, for instance, if I need to go into the production scene, like the user-facing title screen, and make some changes, I can right-click on that scene file, say, I want to lock this. And what will happen is I can now go in and make changes, and if anyone else does anything to try and change that scene in the meantime, Perforce will tell them, hey, you can't do this. We've got this user, right? This teammate of yours is working on the scene. They'll release the lock soon. Just chill. And then you can make your changes, and when you're done and you've pushed the changes, you release the lock, and now someone else can go in and make their changes, and they don't have to worry about accidentally causing a conflict, okay? I don't know if Git has this feature or not. Maybe they do. They should. It's a really cool feature. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, how does a person handle like when one person goes offline? Like if you don't have access to the internet, then how do you know that you don't have to log in?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I'm not sure how it handles offline. My guess is that locking features just wouldn't be supported. You could possibly allow the local user, to do the work, and then when they come back online, it says, "Oh, by the way, your changes are in big trouble. Maybe we can put it into like a temporary change list or something, and when the lock is released, if we got a problem, you can do a merge right then and there." I don't know. There's kind of an assumption, especially for development teams. One classic problem that Google has is Google makes these really impressive products like Google Slides and Google Docs, Google Drive, all this good stuff. But they make it and they test it in some of the world's highest speed, like most well-connected, consistent laboratories. Like if you're on Google's campus, you probably don't have to worry that the Wi-Fi is going to be fast or spotty. Okay, and so, especially in the early days of many of these products, they worked super well if you were in San Francisco, if you were in Mountain View, if you were on the Google campus, they worked like a dream. But the moment you go to like rural Iowa or try and use these products over like a cellular connection in a spotty part of the country, like the products just completely fall apart and they're awful, right? Terrible experiences. And yeah, that's how it kind of happens. Well, most development teams these days that are going to be using Perforce are going to be, I mean, that stuff's not cheap. They're going to be they're going to be on corporate campuses that have super high speed, protected, consistent connections. Ann Arbor used to lose internet and power a lot more often than they currently do. There's been a bunch of upgrades through the city, which has been really nice. But they used to lose power quite often. And when we would lose power, I would actually drive in to the University of Michigan. I would go to one of my offices here, either my actual office or the Wolverine Soft office, and I would just do my work. I knew the power would stay on. I knew the internet would stay up. Why? Because big institutions like companies and universities don't have normal like residential connections to things. Their infrastructure is far more deluxe usually, so it's just way better. Okay, this is a big tangent to say that this kind of problem is a really interesting one, but not one that appears often in practice for the kind of teams who use that software. For student teams, though, like working at home, if a pandemic forces everyone off of corporate campuses to their residential addresses, like this can cause a lot of problems, right? One big thing was a lot of games were delayed or they came out in a bit of a less finished state during the pandemic because a lot of games that were entering their final sprint, bug fixing sprints, polish sprints, the pandemic comes, hits them, a huge transition to working from home has to happen with all the interesting security implications. Are there going to be leaks? Okay, because someone is working at home and their kid comes up and screenshots like some spoilers from the next Diablo game or something, right? And shares with their friends, right? Very interesting time, and a lot of games reported problems because of that switch to working from home. Infrastructure problems too. You suddenly had developers who, if they want to work on the game, they have to download a terabyte of assets. And they're like, I've got that on my work machines, and my work internet connection can handle that within like half an hour. But my home internet connection just went over my terabyte limit for the month because I had to download all the assets so I could work from home. Oh, and by the way, I only got halfway through the download before my hard drive collapsed because I didn't have a hard drive, multi-terabyte hard drive, right? Whew, what a mess. Okay, well, anyway, some studios handled it really well and others did not. Okay, Git repo poisoning. This is what I was talking about earlier. This is the classic one, okay? If you accidentally push a gigantic MP3 file or a gigantic wave, more likely, into your repo, it's very easy to do that. You know, maybe you accidentally downloaded a huge ambient tract from freesound.org, and you wanted like a minute, 60 seconds of like city ambiance, right? You can hear cars in the distance, you can hear honking, people walking by, talking. But actually, what you wanted was a minute. What you downloaded was an hour, and you accidentally put that into the folder. You accidentally just commit and push everything in that folder into your repo. Your repo is now not responding to you anymore or any of your teammates anymore, and it's dead. Okay. Git LFS is a very important thing to remember. You can set this up when you usually want to do this when you create the repo initially. You can set this up to basically track and handle big binary files in a different way. You have to tell it, like, hey, any file that's of type wave or has the wave extension, like, track that with Git LFS. What I think happens is that these big binary files get uploaded differently, kind of separately, and in your repository, Git will not track and diff the file itself so much. It'll diff it in like a checksum manner, right? Not by diving into the binary and doing comparisons so you can merge, but just via checksum, which is much faster. And it will kind of use a pointer in your repository instead of using the actual file. And so everything just happens much faster, and it's great. Okay, spaghetti code, coupling odd interfaces. When we created that Toast manager, if you recall, from way back when we were learning Unity together, there was a big focus on making sure that our Toast manager has really nice, easy-to-use functions. So instead of forcing our teammates to find the game object that has the component, then grab the component that has the function, then finally call the function, no, we're just going to make it public static, and we're going to make it very nice and friendly to use. Just write toastmanager.request and then provide a few well-named parameters, and it just works. The system works no matter if you call it once or 1,000 times in a row. Okay, it works whether you call it during gameplay or during the title screen or the credit screen. It just works all the time, no matter what you send in. That is what you want to be careful of. Every time you create a new piece of technology, you should think, how will my teammates try to use it, and how could they muck this up? Okay? And if you do this, if you practice this very defensive programming style, what could go wrong, right? Some of my friends lately have been telling me that I'm, and I kind of agree with this to an extent. I'm a little bit cynical. I'm a little bit pessimistic and negative in many things. I don't think that's entirely true, but when it comes to coding, that's definitely true. You want to spend a lot of time just asking yourself, how does someone misuse this thing that I just created? How do they misunderstand it? Is there anything that's ambiguous? And you can create things that are just super easy to use. Your teammates will love you, and they will love working with you, and you'll get a lot done, okay? If you write technology that is hard to use, it might work for you, but you are burning your team members' time. If your team members are trying to use something that you wrote and they can't figure out how to do it, they will lose hours of their time, which might sound okay for you, but it will show up in the final quality of your game, okay? The things your teammates were trying to build will not be as good, or they might not get into the game at all. And so this is something that will come back to bite you, okay? What goes around will come around, and so be careful. Often, on big AAA teams, there's a process called code review. Have you ever heard of that? So before you submit code into the main repo or into an important branch, like the production branch, you have to do a pull request, and then that pull request is going to be reviewed. Someone who's probably, hopefully senior and well-respected on the team is going to look at what you have built, and they're going to start asking questions, right? They're going to ask themselves, how do I use this thing? They're going to look into your code and think to themselves, okay, how does this break? Is there any obvious way this is going to break or be nasty? And if they don't like what they see, they're going to send it back and make some recommendations for changes. That's going to happen a lot, especially if you're a new dev on a team or if you are an intern, okay? That I think that's going to describe pretty much all of you in this room soon. So don't be afraid don't be fraught or melt down when your first few code submissions get rejected. Okay? They're trying to teach you something. If your reviewer is a good educator, they will help you understand what kind of quality your code is missing, what kind of qualities the team wants you to have in your submission. Okay, that's what code review is for. You can set this up via GitHub. Not via that video though, but do a Google search for GitHub or GitLab code review, and you'll find a way to set these processes up and get some experience with that. Let's talk a little bit about specialization. Large projects are really, really big, okay? You think your P3 is big. Well, just think about a commercial game, okay? And that is, commercial games usually don't get 6 to 7 weeks. They get sometimes 6 to 7 years in AAA. For indie teams, right, 4 to 5 person indie teams, it's more typical like 2 years for a game. And they get really big. They get really complex, okay? Human beings most of us have, I'd say just about all of us have these biological limitations that as you get older, you'll start to get more familiar with, okay? And our brains just, they got a limited size, okay? If any of you ever feel forgetful, like I feel forgetful all the time, in my pilot training, before I go up into the skies, you know what I've got right in my hand? I've got a checklist, okay? If you get into pilot training yourself, if you ever want to learn to fly someday, you'll discover that the entire aircraft aviation industry is driven by checklists, okay? Even if you've been flying for 30 years, you're going to get into that 737 plane, and you're going to open up your flight bag, and you're going to pull out the checklist for a pre-flight. And it's going to be gigantic. And you're going to go through every item step by step, even if you know it's coming, even if you've done it 1,000 times. Because, and this just happened to me the other day, okay? Something that I had done probably at least 50 times before, I completely whiffed on. I completely forgot. I went too fast through my checklist. I missed something. And it was a bad situation, okay? Not a horrible situation. We fixed it real quick. But it's not good, okay? So this is to say our medium-term memory is limited and is very expensive, okay? Our short-term memory is exceptionally limited, only about 7 things we can keep in our mind. Knowledge acquisition is also exceptionally expensive, and all of you have a feel for this. You're all paying tuition to this university, not just in terms of money, but also in terms of time, okay? It takes months to learn the topic of game dev, and I would say it takes many years to actually do that well. If you are a jack of all trades, that is good for you. That is not a bad thing, but it's not necessarily going to be rewarded when you hit the big leagues. I told you about the tale of the hand guy, right? Do you remember when I told you about that, right? The guy who had spent his entire career and life just devoted to making hands work in games super well. Okay. As a result, he was in significant demand. At GDC one year, I heard a tale about the smoke guy who had been traded between the Call of Duty team and the Battlefield team basically for every game. He makes the next Call of Duty game. It has incredible smoke particle effects. It looks just breathtaking on cheap Xbox 360 hardware, which is an amazing accomplishment. While everything else is rendering as well, it's crazy. And then the Battlefield team hires him away from Activision, and he does the great smoke for Battlefield. And then the next Call of Duty's coming out, so he's going back to Activision, right? And that guy has a very nice salary, apparently, okay, because he's just in that much demand. Those big-time game efforts need the best smoke in the world. They need the best personnel that could possibly be found in any part of the globe, and they're going to pay to get it. And so jack of all trades is really good, especially for startups and in certain ways like education. I find it super gratifying to learn new topics. I'm not particularly good at game engine development, but I am good enough to run a very good course on the topic, okay? I am not a great 3D animator or modeler, but I'm starting to know enough to run what I hope will be an excellent course for it, right? There are situations where jack of all trades is an excellent thing, but not necessarily in the world of professional game dev, okay? So the solution here is to specialize. You can have on your teams DevOps leads. You can have things like a design lead, someone who just loves design, who's always thinking about it, watching the 4-hour-long Joseph Anderson deep dives on games, right? You can have someone who's the art lead. This is the most common, I would say. This is someone who has been drawing in their notebook, right, like every day since elementary school. Someone who just loves art, right, gets into it, enjoys it. There's not much friction for them. They go home and do art on occasion. Maybe they're doing computer science because they love it, or maybe they just want more job security or whatever, but their true passion is art. That's why they're in this game dev class. That's why they're probably taking 298 next semester. And this is probably the person you want to have deciding your art style, okay, making your game's art assets, all right? Making sure your color palettes, your fonts, your scene transitions look good. This might be the person you put on Juice, okay? They're probably going to do a much better job than just choosing someone at random. If you don't have this person, that's a bummer, but you can choose your game's genre and overall design to make that less of a problem. If you have a bunch of really good artists, you can emphasize and lean into that. You might have someone who's a data lead. This is someone who plays a big part during playtests, someone who implements tools to help you collect data on where people are running in your game. How far are people getting? Week to week, is that getting better or is it getting worse? You might have an AI lead, which I've mentioned a couple times. If you have a horror game, many cool horror games actually have a persistent monster. This kind of got very popular with the release of Resident Evil 3 on the PlayStation, the famous Nemesis, a gigantic boss monster who is just constantly stalking you throughout the game and may or may not show up at any given time. And that creates a tremendous sense of dread and fear and tension, and then shock when he shows up in an unexpected place, right? You need good AI, like very good AI, if your game fits that description, okay? If you have an RTS game, you need to have excellent AI so your units know where to go and what to do, right? And so that they are maintainable and manageable. If you're making a game like Pikmin, you need to devote a lot of time to making those characters work in a way that's very fun and not too dumb, but also not too smart, right? Because they're Pikmin. You have to kind of build in some stupidity to make them charming and make the game challenging. A lot of people think that I'm going to write good AI for my game, and that just means the AI is super good at defeating the player. No, that's not usually what you want to do. If you're trying to write an AI to solve a human's problems, you do usually want that AI to be all-knowing, super fast, all-powerful, right? An LLM that sometimes gets it wrong is notably worse than one that gets it wrong less, right? But in a game, you're not trying to help someone do their homework or understand something, some new problem. Actually, you are. But in a game, you often have to kind of program in stupidity into your AI opponents, right? Or even sometimes your AI allies to make them interesting, okay? Anyway, okay. The DevOps lead. This tends to be the person who focuses a lot on the development process. We're having a lot of merge conflicts lately. Why is that? Is there something we can clean up or do differently as a team, all of us, to make us all move faster? This is the person who might have control of the repo. They might accept or deny pull requests. They might have bring up issues that are happening on the repo. They might set up Git LFS. A quick anecdote from the industry. As important deadlines are coming up, like, hey, we're going to be exhibiting at E3 or GDC in a week, what will usually happen is that the DevOps lead, whoever has control of the repository, sometimes this is a producer, will basically start to lock down the repo, and they will start rejecting any new feature adds. They will only allow you to push bug fixes to the repo. The reason is basically you want your game to become more stable over time, especially as you're honing in on a super important date, like a big playtest. If your game is broken during the playtest, you're not going to get any value from that playtest. People are just going to tell you the game is broken, but you already knew that. So, and then after the big deadline has passed, then a bunch of new features come in, and usually the game is broken for at least a few days, sometimes a couple of weeks. while people get the new features in. And when you add something to a game, what happens? How much time does it take for the thing to actually be good? You take 1 week to get something in the game and 1 more week for it to be any good at all. That's almost always how it goes, right? It's either broken. If it's not broken, it technically works. It's probably unpolished, or it's confusing. It's not guided very well, right? So the game doesn't explain it, doesn't build you up to it, doesn't balance it properly. And so that's just how these things go. All right. This is the person who enforces version control policies like lab scenes. They hunt down any inefficiency in the dev process. The aesthetics lead might be one of the most important, if not the most important, in the entire project. This is the protector of the first impression. Like it or not, video games are a very visual field. Okay. And people will play a game simply because it looks pretty. Okay, even if the game is rotten underneath, they will probably play it if it looks cool. Okay, this might be a team instead of one person because it's so critical. This is someone who invests a lot of time in figuring out the game's art style, making the game feel cohesive, and then also getting things like audio in. Okay, audio is an important aesthetic, especially when it comes to emotion and vibe for your game. There's a reason I play music at the beginning of every lecture and during the break, okay? I don't want it to feel awkward. I want to put you in that kind of slightly energetic but slightly flowing mood, right? We're rolling, we got this. And audio is how I can do that. I can't really do that with the visuals very well, okay? They invest time in juice, charm, characterization. Does my game have cool characters? Do my characters feel relatable or charming in some way? 298, that's going to be a huge focus, okay? One of my big hopes after 298 gets rolling is that 494 starts to actually have cooler characters and more charm and more juice, okay? I think one of the easy benchmarks is I want to play the game and I want to say to myself, yeah, I might consider buying like a plushie or an action figure or something, a figure of that character, right? That's a good sign. A lot of these indie games that blow up, Five Nights at Freddy's, they blow up in part because they just love those characters, right? They're trying to kill you. And despite that, you end up liking them a lot, right? You end up with people wanting to buy plushie, merchandise stuff. That's a good sign. You know how George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars, got rich? Well, by creating Star Wars. But how? Because he actually signed over a lot of the rights for Star Wars to Fox. So Fox made bank on Star Wars, that's for sure. I think all the ticket sales went to Fox. You know, how did George Lucas become just filthy rich? If he gave away the ticket sales, what did he keep? Famously.
I'm gonna guess merchandise and like the rights to the opening.
Yes. Merchandising, where the real money from the movie is made. Okay? I'm going to show you a very famous, very fun clip from a film not called Star Wars, but called Spaceballs. Has anyone seen Spaceballs? Okay. The character who's going to explain this to us, his name is Yogurt, and it's Mel Brooks, the director of the film. Okay, let's take a look.
Who hasn't heard of Yogurt? Yogurt the wise. Yogurt the all-powerful. Yogurt the magnificent. Please, don't make a fuss. I'm just plain Yogurt. But you're the one, yes. I am the keeper of a greater magic. A power known throughout the universe as the Force. No, the Schwartz. Schwartz. Yes. The Schwartz. But Yogurt, what is this place? What is it that you do here? Merchandising. Merchandising? What's that? Merchandising. Come, I'll show you. Open up this door. Come, walk this way. Take a look. We put the picture's name on everything. Merchandising, merchandising, where the real money from the movie is made. Spaceballs the t-shirt. Spaceballs the coloring book. Spaceballs the lunchbox. Spaceballs the breakfast cereal. Spaceballs the flavor. Kids love this one.
Okay, right. So this has been known for a very long time. Merchandising, right? So a lot of films and media these days will be designed very specifically to have standout characters, so that because characters are very easy to merchandise. Sometimes this goes overboard, right? So the kind of horror games that have very prominent, unique characters on the front of the box. That's actually a subgenre now called mascot horror. And Five Nights at Freddy's was one of the big ones to popularize and kind of created that subgenre. And it annoys people because a lot of games these days in that genre fit into that exact mold. Let's create a character that's very charismatic. Let's put them on the cover of the box, and let's just try and use that character to pull people in. That just sounds like making a great game to me, if I'm being honest. But that exact formula, where just a very prominent handful of characters is so common, it annoys some people. That just kind of sounds I'm describing every piece of media ever made, though. Cool characters, put them on the box. Yes, that is the point. Humans are interested in other humans or other characters or beings. That's just how we tend to be. Though it's very interesting, the kind of opposite of that is say we're not going to have any prominent characters, but we're going to have a big group of people, right? This new film's not going to have a ton of standout characters. It's really about how a community in the film will react to a problem. And that, as far as I've heard, people have told me that's a little bit more of a European or Southeast Asian kind of style of filmmaking that's a little bit less focused on the charismatic Hollywood-style main character, and it's a little bit more focused on the group, which is very interesting. Anyway, okay. So this might be the person who devotes a lot of time to learning about how shaders and shader code and how shader graph and tools like that work. Because if there's one thing that student games almost never have, it's good shading effects and good post-processing. Students usually overdo it. They usually have very stock and boring effects if they have any. One of the reasons is because shader programming is a huge pain in the butt. It's a very unique and weird style of programming. It's hard to debug. And if you don't have a lot of graphics knowledge, it's just very difficult to get into. Very different style of programming. I'm going to introduce it to you because we have a shader and SIMD programming lecture, i.e. GPU programming lecture, coming up. So I'm going to give you a little taste of what that's like soon. But if you want to get good at it, you got to be doing this basically full time, okay? And so if you're doing a lot of other stuff, you just can't get good at it. You're going to have bad shading effects, and you don't want that. Consider things likely to be forgotten. So fonts, okay? I saw a lot of Arial fonts in our last playtest. You don't want that, okay? Cinematography. What kind of camera angles can we get? What can we do with the camera at certain moments in the game? Just really give the player a dynamic feeling, give an artistic feel of certain shots, okay? Color palettes, okay? I'm going to show you a game. I'm going to show you just a generic game. What's a generic game that came out lately? Not to dunk on any games. What's a generic kind of mediocre game? Just Cause? Okay, Just Cause. Just Cause. I know a lot of people really like that series, but I agree. It does. My memories of it are a bit generic, right? Okay, so this is a game. It's very boisterous. It's very bright and vibrant, right? But there are quite a few other games that look this way. Now, this is an action-packed game about a dude with a grappling hook flying around everywhere and lots of guns and explosions, okay? Great stuff. You know, yeah, you just kind of look at it, okay? Look at this. I want to show you a game that I played, I think, last year. It was an indie game, and it has a very interesting color palette. What it does with color is a much more unique thing than what we see here in this game. These colors are slightly more vibrant than the average game, but that's about it, okay? They still look pretty normal. I'm going to show you a game called Hazelnut Hex, okay? This is a game, it's a shmup. It's actually a subgenre of the classic arcade-style shooter, and it's called a Q-'em-up, right? It usually features really adorable characters and enemies as well. The piranha plants here, the little clouds. If you look at this game, if you look at a screenshot of this game, we'll go to the Nintendo page, see if we can see it. Oh, it's so laggy. Okay. What do you notice about the color in this game? There are certain colors that never appear in this game. There are certain colors that are only used for certain things in this game. Okay? What vibe is the background of this game? The background of this game. If you look at a background object, it has a certain color, doesn't it? What does the color of a background thing in this game tend to be? What do you notice? You're all becoming artists. Yes? Yeah, kind of a bluish, kind of a greenish, not a ton of detail, right? In your brain begins to form connections. It starts to form a mapping between color and purpose, okay? If your brain sees something in this game that is kind of like shaded bluish, a bit greenish, okay? There's a very good chance it's actually in the background, thus it does not matter to gameplay. Okay? What about the color pink? That's pretty different color from blue and green. Okay? What does pink mean in this game? It's used very often. Yes?
Everything important to gameplay is pink.
Yeah. If it is pinkish, it is probably in the foreground. It's probably a gameplay element. Okay? Right? Your main character is a little bit green, right? And has different shades of all these colors, but right, she is bold, outlined in purplish pink, right? All of your shots are pink. The enemies are pink, okay? Right? However, there's one piece of gameplay that is not pink. It uses a different color. And this color is pretty much reserved just for things that are dangerous. What are dangerous things in this game? You don't want to touch them. Orange/red, okay? This is a genre where there are just thousands of bullets and enemies and stuff, dangerous things coming at you, and they need to pop out. If you take damage because you didn't see something, that feels really bad. If you take damage because you failed to dodge something, well, that's on you. You want to get better, you want to improve, players accept that. And so in this game, the red and orangish color is reserved for dangerous projectiles coming at you. Okay? And so this really helps make a game that is very busy be readable visually. The fact that this game is just addicted to greens, purples, and the occasional reds, okay, and pinks gives it a very, very cohesive feel, okay? It also really just, the game stands out. You see a screenshot, this does not look like this. This looks like it could be any other game. But this looks exactly like one game, Hazelnut Hex, okay? And there are very few other games that choose this particular art style. So that's why I'm bringing up this topic of art and color palettes. It's very important for gameplay. It's also very important for making your game feel a sense of professionalism, cohesiveness, and uniqueness as well, okay? So hopefully all the artists in the crowd are reminded of this, and hopefully if you're not an artist, you could feel a little part of your heart just became one tiny little pinch of an artist, okay? You're now 99% engineer and 1% artist, okay? Good job. Okay, scene transitions, okay? Things that get you from one scene to the next, that make things feel cohesive and polished. If you are just using scene manager.loadScene to move from scene to scene, it's very jarring. It happens in one frame, right? It doesn't look very good. Eventually, you'll be required to fix all these things. I think beginning with like P3 beta, you get the professionalism criteria on your rubric, where if you don't have these things, you will start to lose points, okay? Okay, blah, blah, blah. Design lead. This is the person who, or maybe multiple people, who are trying to find the fun, okay? This is probably a team, and everyone will contribute to this in the early stages while you're trying to figure out what your game's going to be, okay? These people, might invest time in paper prototyping. They might spend a lot of time opening up new projects in Unity and just doing little prototypes and experiments. Okay, how do I make this feel good with the controls? Is there a way I can tweak this mechanic when I just have a bunch of boxes and pills and capsules and stuff? Is there a way I can tweak it to make it really fun and interesting? Okay, they might do lots of sketches. Okay, I love sketches. I'm really bad at them, but it's really important. Okay, concept art. This is art that is meant to help others on the team understand what the vision for the project is, what something is going to be, okay? Do you know, I'm going to show you some concept art for a film, a famous film that you've definitely heard of, okay? Can you tell me what this film is? This is a well-respected, for the most part, and famous director who did these sketches, these design sketches for a very high-budget film that you've definitely heard of. Which film is this? And which director is this? Do you know? What does Run of Doom and the words fleet make you think of? Yeah, just start throwing stuff out. You're going to get it. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. This is the storyboard concept art created by Ryan Johnson for Star Wars Last Jedi. Okay? Kind of a unique film and sometimes a controversial film in some interesting ways. Ryan Johnson had a big problem on this film. He has this idea for the film and what's going to happen, what character's going to do what, how the scene's going to feel. He has all these ideas in his head. The problem is Ryan Johnson doesn't make the film alone because no one makes a game or a film alone, right? And so he has to somehow transplant his vision, his ideas in his head. He has to get them out of his head intact, in one piece, and he has to get them into the heads, the unique heads of hundreds of people, animators, right? His lighting director, okay? His cinematographer. He has to share his vision in a way that works. Now, what's really nice about sketching is that you don't have to be amazing at it. You don't have to be great at it. These are some of the worst sketches I've ever seen. I'm fairly certain I could sketch dramatically better than Ryan Johnson could here, and I'm terrible at it myself. Okay. By the way, he made, I think, $3 million at least on this film. And I think that's just like the upfront chunk you get. So for these sketches, I think Ryan should take some lessons. He can definitely afford them. Okay. Might help him in the future. In terms of games, this is one of my sketches. So I was making a game for the Federal Fish and Wildlife Service. If you can believe it, my company's early business model is making video games for the government. Did you know you can do that? Did you know there's a market for that? There is. Okay. We are making a game to spread awareness about white nose syndrome, which is a disease that afflicts bat populations in North America. So the idea, basically, is that we would make a game where you would fly a little drone around and you'd fly this drone through caves. And the drone would have some food, some bugs and stuff it would deliver to bats. Because what white nose syndrome does is it saps the food reserves. It saps the energy of bats while they're hibernating so that the bats wake up too early and they die because winter is not done yet and they don't have any food in their cave. And so I drew this and what I did next is I took this sketch of our little drone and I sent it to an actual 2D artist. And then she sent me this. And that looks way better, doesn't it? But the important thing here is that this image paired with a few words was enough to help my artist understand what was in my head. And sometimes my artist can take what is in my head and actually say, actually, I'm going to make your idea even better and then put it back into my head, right? Because I didn't really have this idea of this like honey color and this like teardrop shape, which makes it look like this drop of honey. It's just amazing, right? Fantastic, fantastic idea. By the way, this concept, this art was really important because we showed it to our contacts in the government, and they said, whoa, this is actually not going to work at all. You know why? You know why it's not going to work? Because drones are extremely noisy, dangerous if they get close to you. And like, why would you fly this into a cave full of sleeping bats? The bats will never come back. You might hurt them. You might bring in additional disease. It's a terrible idea. And it is. But the important part here is that we got this concept art out so that the scientists in the government could understand what we were going for, and they could give us feedback to say, you need a totally different approach. And we made a totally different approach, and it ended up working out relatively well, okay? So anyway, that's why this stuff is so important. Here's another sketch. Now, this one I did not do. If I did this sketch, I would say I'm pretty good at sketching. This is a character for a detective game. I wanted to make a detective game where basically the premise is that it's an ultra low budget detective who's not licensed or anything. Anyway, we had this character, Tracy, and her main device was this gigantic, comically sized magnifying glass. We wanted this magnifying glass to be able to do a lot of different things. So it could display inventory and status information like health, money, stuff like that. It was also something she could use to like fight and beat people with if she needed to. And I think I had some other concept art somewhere where she could like use it to vault. So she could like swing it at the ground underneath her and then go flipping through the air. So stuff like that is really useful for giving you the vibe of a game, of a character, and also what mechanics can be and do. Okay, so pretty cool stuff. It was then turned into an actual image, right? An actual animation. And we went with let's see here. We went with like an interesting like Lego movie animation style where the movements are kind of choppy. Yeah, looks pretty good. I sent this stuff to an actual animator who was able to make it all happen, and their job was pretty easy, okay, as a result. This is a concept sketch that won me a several $1,000 job. This is a concept art sketch that cost me, I think, about $60. So my artist did a great job. What happened was that on Upwork.com, we saw that there was an ad. Someone was soliciting, hey, we want someone to build us a match 3 game themed around cafeteria food, around children's meal prep. I guess there's a market for that, right? I don't know. If you got the money, I've got your game, okay? And what we did was we looked at the job description. What does this client need? And I went to my concept artist and said, hey, I'll pay a bit more for this because we need this on a rush, right? Tight schedule. Can we make a match 3 game with a background of a cafeteria? All the match 3 items are like different food items you might see in a cafe. And there's like a lunch lady kind of theme and character. Maybe there's like some bonus stuff. The points are in money, right? Instead of like thousands of points, you now have thousands of cents, right? Here are the characters from the client that they posted in the job ad, so draw them in there. We got this done in just a couple hours. It's kind of a rough sketch. And then we sent it to the client, and we immediately got their attention and won the job. So I spent about $60, maybe it was like $75, maybe $100. That sounds like a lot, but if you have a good chance of winning several $1,000s, you spend that every time. Okay, you'd be happy to spend $100 to give you a good shot at getting a couple thousand, right? This is not gambling. The odds were pretty good. And now that we have this and the client really likes this, we can fix it up, okay? And here's another thing, the victory screen at the end of the game, okay? We drew up this sketch. Client approved it. We then make the final version, okay? Really, really nice and effective. So that's how it goes, right? That's why sketching is important. Why, if you have any remaining time or extra time in your life, see if you can take an intro drawing course, okay? Just get some very basic sketching skills. It doesn't need to be great or anything. But if your friends can look at something you drew and usually tell what you drew, that's a really good start. Really good. Super useful in creative lines of work, okay? All right. Lots of thought about controls, how to keep controls simple, okay? How can you make controls intuitive? controls are very much a barrier. There might be a future where we can just link up our brains to a game and there will be zero friction. Anyone will be able to play a game because they simply put on this hat or get the Neuralink going and they can just make whatever they need to happen. But right now, controls are a big problem for getting people into a game. A huge source of friction, especially for people who don't play games much, or maybe they're unfamiliar with their genre. Okay? Prototyping, right? Quick and dirty, one-off throwaway tech demos to try and figure out if something is going to be fun or not. Okay? Some extra notes on specialization. One of the big wins of specialization is that it puts the responsibility for something into one person's hand. Okay? And that's a very good thing, sometimes. Has anyone ever heard of committees that kind of get bogged down? Or they move slowly, right? Or maybe you hear about a bureaucracy or an organization that tends to move super slowly or very conservatively or struggles to fix its problems, right? Well, one problem with this is the diffusion of responsibility. If you have 10 people on a committee and something goes wrong, which of those 10 people are going to fix it? The answer, unfortunately, often is no one, because no one knows who's really responsible for this and no one receives most of the blame. So passing the buck is a very common problem when people are just kind of generally doing stuff and don't have a specific job or role. Okay, let's watch this video. This is a really great video on the topic.
Place like the street in New York City. If you were unfortunate enough to be the victim of a crime or taken ill unexpectedly, you might think that surrounded by all these people, someone would intervene. After all, isn't there safety in numbers? Psychologists say no. Research suggests that often a victim is less likely to receive assistance when surrounded by a group rather than a single bystander. When people are in a crowd, it's easier to pass the buck. It's what psychologists call the diffusion of responsibility. Liverpool Street Station in London, a busy thoroughfare for commuters. Unknown to these passers-by, Peter is an actor. As part of an experiment on bystander apathy, he's pretending to be ill. How long before he gets help? Helping would be inconvenient or even risky. He lies there for more than 20 minutes and no one raises an eyebrow.
It's always very distressing to watch situations like this where people are obviously suffering and no one's actually helping them. But what we have here is two conflicting rules. One is the rule we ought to help, and the other is the rule that we ought to do what everybody else is doing. And here we have a group of, effectively, a group of strangers who are exerting the pressure not to intervene, not to help. And it's very difficult to rebel.
Ruth, another actor, takes Peter's place. How long before she receives help? 4 minutes later, and 34 people have passed without stopping.
Well, people don't really want to know. They just haven't got the time. Well, they haven't got the time, they just don't want to get involved.
Unwittingly, these strangers have silently formed a temporary group with a rule: don't get involved. They're afraid to stand out from the crowd and won't take action if no one else does. This woman has clearly spotted Ruth, but she conforms to the rule and does nothing. Watch what happens, though, when someone else helps.
You alright? You alright? Yes, thank you. Sure, you're a bit sleepy, you know what I mean?
She suddenly finds herself in a different group with a new rule to help.
You want to sit up? You alright? Yeah.
First I thought she was dead. Then I checked to see if she was breathing or not. And I looked around and I couldn't believe that no one had noticed her because there was a bloke that sat there just absorbed reading a newspaper.
This time, Peter's dressed as a respectable gentleman. Now that his dress is in keeping with those around him, how long before he's rescued?
Hello, sir. How are you,
I'm alright.
6 seconds. She even calls him sir, and suddenly everyone's a good Samaritan.
Do you suffer from epilepsy?
No.
Why you're lying on the floor in the rain?
Because he's part of the right group. Everyone wants to help.
I would just hate to be in his position of feeling ill and nobody helping him walking past, so I'd just like to check that he was okay. And I'd bubble his sweat, so he must really be ill because he'd have ruined his suit anyway.
Kind of spooky, eh? Kind of spooky. So one thing that I think you will notice just personally is, have you ever been on a group and something goes wrong? Maybe there's a bug. Maybe a feature is broken. Tutorial's bad. And you think to yourself, someone else has got it, right? Oh yeah, John is probably gonna get this one, right? Yeah, someone else will take care of it. I'm sure the problem will get solved. We got a good team, right? John is awesome at this stuff. I'm sure he's grabbing it, going to take care of it. I don't have to deal with it. Well, that's what happens, and not just for you, but everyone might think that. And if that happens, well, everyone has passed the buck in a circle, and the diffusion of responsibility has caused that responsibility to fall through the cracks. And now, until it really blows up, your committee is going to be blind and not going to solve it. Okay? If you have a game in which AI is super important, and you have one person on your team who kind of owns AI across your game, they're the expert on AI, they did all the AI, and you go to a playtest and the AI just flops, it breaks, it's awful. Who's responsible for this? Who's getting all the blame? Who knows immediately what they have to do? Right? I don't even have to say it. It's the AI lead, okay? If the AI is bad in your game, everyone knows whose fault this is, and everyone knows who has to step up to solve the problem, okay? And thus, you can see one of the benefits of specialization. You know who to go to when things go wrong, all right? And passing the buck becomes a little bit less likely, okay? A potential issue here is if one person dominates a part of the project, if I'm the guy for the aesthetics, right? I might not ask for help when I need to because I'm the aesthetics guy, right? If I get overloaded, I can't tell anyone I'm struggling, right? I can't ask for feedback. And that's a huge problem, okay, right? It is very important that even if you specialize, you know to ask for help if you need it. Okay, not everyone can do everything alone. This stuff we're trying to do is very hard, all right? Some of our problems are seriously hard and we can't handle and burden it all. So pride and fear of judgment can prevent us from asking for help when we need to, and that causes the whole project to suffer eventually. You really want to adopt a culture of our instead of my. It's not our problem. It's not my problem, it's our problem, and we need to find a way to solve it no matter what that entails, okay? Instead of his problem or her idea, it's our problem, it's our idea. Okay. Another thing to note here is that on teams like this, you don't have leads. You've got leads. Okay. You don't have gods. Okay. There are no dictators on your team. Okay. Successful teams are usually, some successful teams are led by gods, but most successful teams are not. Okay. You know that you have a god, a dictator on your team in a situation like this. Okay.
Snap your W-2 and file your taxes 100% free. Plus, get your biggest refund.
If someone on your team at the biggest industry conference gets an intro like that, probably they're the god of your project, they're the dictator of your project, and thou shalt do whatever they say. This is kind of, what is that? It's kind of called an auteur, right? This used to be more common in film, right? where an auteur director would just handle and force every aspect of a film or a game. Kojima is a good example of that in modern times. This can work. This can also fail horribly, right? So has anyone played Kojima's latest game, Death Stranding? It is one of the strangest and most unique and most unpleasant in some ways and most cool in some ways game that's come out in a very long time. It feels like a very esoteric, quirky indie game that somehow got a many million-dollar budget because Kojima was at the ahead of it. And so that's kind of what happens, right? You've got one person just dictating most of the game and its design and its vibes and philosophy and how it's going to work, which means you get all of the flaws of one person and all of the cool quirks of one person as well, okay? Which can be what you're after or maybe not what you're after, depending on what you want in a game. But here's the idea. You do not have any gods on your team, okay? You don't have any dictators on your team. All right. Everyone should be giving feedback on everything. And you shouldn't be disregarding other teammates just because you're the aesthetic lead. And who are they to say my game looks ugly when they're just engineers without an art talent bone in their body, right? No. Consensus should still be the rule despite having specialized leads. And leads should make the case to their team when they want to do something, okay? It's kind of like having external stakeholders, okay? Leads want to go and convince the team members that, hey, I really think this art style is a good idea. Here are some times I've seen it work. I drew up some concept art. Can I get your vote that this is a good idea, right? That's how a successful lead will run on a well-run team, okay? Some tools. Let's talk about those really quickly, and then I'll let you leave a bit early because we skipped your break, okay? So knowledge sharing is a really big deal, okay? You share knowledge among your team members constantly. In fact, just in your daily life, forget about 494, human beings are constantly communicating with other human beings. If you can make yourself slightly faster, slightly more effective, slightly better at communication, the rewards that build up over time will be tremendous, okay? You want this knowledge sharing to be very low friction or you won't do it. And it happens constantly, so making a tiny improvement is going to be a really valuable investment, okay? And this is where I plug, again, if you haven't installed it already, install something like ShareX or maybe MonoSnap if you're on OS X, okay? I will remind you why, all right? Imagine I'm looking at a slide and I just don't like the slide. Look at this. It's too much text. This is awful. I want to tell my IAs that this has to be fixed. Control-Shift-4. Boom. I've just taken a screenshot. It was uploaded. I can paste it into Discord, and now they're looking at the problem that I just saw. I don't have to describe, oh, on slide number whatever, we've got too much text, okay, and I have to go copy and paste the text. No. Quick screenshot. ShareX automatically uploads it to a service of my choice, puts the link automatically into my copy-paste clipboard, and I just paste it wherever I want it to go. It's that easy. This is good for images, but if I'm playing a game, right? Like, do I have any GIFs in here? Yeah, no, I'm just going to pretend, okay? Let's say that I've got this gameplay going on right in front of me, okay? And there's a bug that happens if I run up and I do a certain mechanic in the corner of the room. I can't just take a screenshot. I need a video. Okay, I'm playing the game, all right, I'm showing the issue, Control-Shift-2. I want to record this part of the screen, I'm recording, I demonstrate the bug, I'm done demonstrating the bug, okay? I hit stop, boom, it's already uploaded in my clipboard, I paste it into Discord, my friends are watching the bug happen. I don't have to describe the bug via text, okay? I don't have to send 5 screenshots, I just record the bug, I send it, boom, it's awesome, great. Maybe this isn't a bug. Maybe this is a cool new feature. I can record it quickly, send it in the Discord, and now all of my teammates have a morale boost because they just saw the awesome feature that's going into the next build of the game. Okay? And now they saw something cool coming from me, so now they want to create something cool and send it to the rest of the team. That's how you get a really good positive feedback loop going. On The Sims 4, whenever anyone made something awesome, they would email blast it. And we would get these great GIFs showing what cool new features in the game. there were times during the development of that game where everyone was kind of depressed, right? Like the headlines were not that great. We knew that we weren't going to have a lot of content in the game. We knew some fans were raging online and they were a bit disappointed in us. And so that made us feel bad. And so what kind of pick us back up are these cool features going into the game, right? This is not going to be all bad. That thing's awesome. It's going in right now. It's great, right? Okay, anyway, communication is so essential that you really, really want to do it right. And installing tools like this early is going to let you use it for a long time. If you wait to the final week of development to install these powerful tools, you only have 1 week to reap the reward of that investment. It only takes about 30 minutes to set up. You can find YouTube tutorials. It's really great. Okay? Have you ever heard, like, if you want to have a lot of money in retirement, what do you need to do? What do you have to do? Yes?
Invest it, 401k.
Yeah, you have to invest it. So let's say I'm 60 years old and I'm retiring in 5 years. I'm going to start investing, and that's going to make me a lot of money, right? No, that's you're out of time. Why?
Because you won't have enough time to compound that interest.
Exactly, right? Investments require time. You make the investment as early as you can, and then you get to enjoy all the time to reap the rewards. If you make an investment at the last moment, that's not an investment. Okay, you're just going to have to take it back out in a year or two, and then it's did nothing for you. It might even be a negative idea because maybe market had a couple down years, like it happens, and you just lost a ton of money, and that was really dumb. Okay. So think about all of these little upgrades in your tooling as investments, and you will be in good shape, okay? So knowledge sharing, right? Use things like ShareX or MonoSnap. Doesn't take that long. It's free and open source. It's great stuff, okay? Discord and Slack are another great solution. Make sure that you get everyone into a group where you can quickly have real-time communication without having to start a video call. Sometimes you just can't do a video call if you're on the bus or something, okay? Try and also meet in person, and that means using things like Doodle or When is Good to figure out when people can meet. Google Calendar is really great. You can set up notifications in Google Calendar. Go to your calendar on the left side of the screen, go to Settings and Sharing. You can set up notifications to remind you of events so that you don't miss anything. Okay, you can have mobile notifications, email notifications. I've got a ton set up. And I usually don't miss things. You can also look at your calendar every day. Okay, this is a very old calendar of mine. If you can believe it, lately my calendar's been busier than this. Nasty. Okay. How to determine leadership. Okay, you can do a blind voting if you want to. If it's just really obvious who should be a leader, a particular lead, the aesthetics lead. Okay, who should be that? Right? You just hand it to them. Okay, unanimous vote, no big deal. If it's a bit contentious, you can do a blind vote where basically everyone puts their vote into a hat. You mix it up so that you get the consensus from the team, but you can't really assign blame or animosity to any one person. You don't know if they voted for you or not. Okay? Good technique in general. And the last thing I'm going to show you is kind of a bonus. In this course, you don't really need to present as a team. You kind of do at the showcase, but you don't have to give an end of semester presentation like you have to in a lot of courses. So, when you have to present as a team, I'm going to give you some tips, okay? You are creating an experience, just like how you create a game experience, okay? You're creating a live show experience whenever you present as a team, okay? When you're presenting as a team, you want to do what these two people are doing, okay? If you have to stand up there, you want to redirect people's attention to whoever currently has the floor, okay? You do not want to do what this guy is doing, okay? Look at this guy. When you see this guy inside, internally, you're probably chuckling a little bit because it looks goofy. You wonder, what is this guy looking at? What is he thinking? Okay, maybe there's something at the back of the room. Maybe he's thinking about what he's going to have for dinner tonight, okay? But whenever you're looking at this guy's face and thinking about what is he looking at, what is he thinking about, you know what you're not doing? As an audience member, you are not actually listening to the person delivering information, okay? So you will see that so much of presentations and theater and even game design is about manipulating the user's attention. What does the user have their attention on, and how are you going to shift and move that around? Okay? This person is scattering the attention. These two people are focusing it on the person who needs that attention to do their job. Okay? So here's a good example of doing it right. All right? If one person has the floor and is speaking, right, the other two team members, they might be speaking in a while, but until then, they're going to focus your attention, redirect it to the person who actually has the floor. This is an example of doing it very, very, very poorly. Okay? A super funny example, right? She's kind of got a smirk on her face, and she is looking off screen. And so instead of actually enjoying the presentation, you are instead wondering, what on earth is she looking at? And maybe I should be thinking about what she's thinking about instead of what is being presented. Okay? I want to show you a very funny example of this related to University of Michigan. These two are professional. So Kirk Herbstreit and Brent Musburger are professional broadcasters. They are very good at this. And what they will do is when one of them is talking, the other will look and redirect attention to the ones who is talking. When the other person takes over, the person who had been talking will redirect attention to him. They're very good at this. They understand how to put together a good presentation, a good show. Okay? Good experience. Eminem also knows all about this, and he's going to do the exact opposite. He's going to tank this interview for fun. Okay? And I think you'll know what I'm talking about when I play this clip. Let's take a look.
To introduce Marshall Mathers. Somebody may know Eminem, but he's going to join the Saturday Night Crew with our music intro starting next Saturday. Now, folks, I want to take you to the premiere of one of his new videos called Berserk. Take a listen. It's headed to the top of the charts. Marshall, you did that? Yeah, sorry. Black TV freaks me out. Yes, I'm sorry. What was the question?
Okay. Right. So when this happened a number of years ago, this happened, I think, in 2012 when I was a student, maybe 2013. And it was all over the internet, Reddit, right? Super funny what he did. He basically just bombed this interview. An interview trying to push his own music just for fun. He photobombed it. Okay? You can see here that it's really funny to notice that Kirk Herbstreit notices what he is doing mid-interview, and he's trying to redirect things to Musburger, but he sees Eminem is completely tanking it, like acting like he's totally out of it. Maybe he's on some drugs or something. And he laughs. What does Kirk Herbstreit do? He's very good at this. He laughs. Why? To try and reduce the awkwardness. Like he's in on the joke, right? He's trying to bail out Eminem and make this all work. Okay, you can see him notice what he is doing. He's like falling over. Do I need to catch him or something? No, he's faking this. Okay, act like it's funny. And he does. He smiles, turns the camera. Oh, isn't this funny what he's doing, right? He does a little gesture, right? I'm in on the joke. And then he goes back to redirecting to Musburger like he should. Okay? That's how it's done, okay? This is a real thing, so just keep this in mind when you're presenting. You are trying to create an experience. You're redirecting attention to where it needs to be. You are making real-world guidance happen. You are guiding the player, okay, and getting them to focus on what you need them to focus on, okay? All right, just be careful that you don't focus too intently, all right? Otherwise, this can happen.
Help shape what board games are meant to be. So borrowing influences from what successfully executed in the past. The disturbing creatures, the mind-boggling, the mind-bending psychology that transports players to an alternative nightmare world. And in the process, involving our core combat in a logical direction as opposed to just increasing.
Right. And like this, yeah, this is kind of weird. It's just how he's positioned. He's kind of in the shadow of the other person. He's got this like unblinking stare, and he also has a bit of his facial expression is not ideal, okay? Also, like you want to redirect attention, but you also want to give some motion to it as well. This does not look better until the very end he kind of breaks his focus. At which point, in the crowd, I'm sure this looked better. This camera has a particular angle that makes it look evil. Anyway, okay. All right. So everyone, right, when it comes to teams and politics and all of this business, right, I've given you a lot of tips. Hopefully some of them will be useful to you on your teams. But by far the most important thing, by a mile, is that you think about your team's dynamics, its culture, and how each other are doing as the project goes on, okay? And these tips and ideas, how to fix things, how to make things better, will come to you. You don't need to remember this presentation so long as you remember one thing, okay? Your teammates, your friends matter. And if you notice that things are starting to go wrong, okay, you can get things back on track. So long as you meet, you talk to each other, you have some empathy for each other, you can fix most things, okay? All right. Everyone, that's all I have for you today. Next time, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the topic of games and education. A very impactful field for games. If you want to have, we already talked about this idea of guidance, that games are always trying to teach you something. Well, it turns out we can actually use games to teach many real-world things, things that have immediate real-world application, okay? Games are absolutely perfect for that, and there are a lot of money in games these days, game production for the purpose of education. But how to do this effectively is a real question, okay? How many of you have ever played an educational game? And how many of you would play that same educational game today? Probably not, because most educational games struggle, okay? And we're going to talk more about that and why it happens and how to do it right next time, next Wednesday, okay? See you then, everyone. Take care. Look for your feedback to arrive tomorrow, probably evening, okay? Tomorrow evening. Okay. Everyone online, I will see you later. Bye-bye.